The sound of pickaxe striking stone echoed through the canyon as Katherine Walsh swung again, her arms burning with exhaustion. And then she saw it, a glint of something that made her heart stop. Gold, real gold embedded in the rock face before her in the summer heat of 1872. She dropped to her knees, forgetting the pain in her shoulders, forgetting the blisters on her palms, forgetting everything except the vein of precious metal that snaked through the granite like a promise from God himself. Katherine had been working this claim for 3 months, ever since her father died of fever and left her with nothing but a plot of land in the Idaho Territory, and a dream that had consumed his final years. Everyone in Snake River had told her to sell, that mining was no work for a woman of 22, that she should find a husband and let him worry about such things. She had smiled politely and kept swinging her pickaxe. Now, as the afternoon sun beat down on her back and sweat dripped into her eyes, Katherine knew her stubbornness had paid off. This was not just a speck or a trace. This was substantial. This could change everything. She worked carefully, extracting samples, her hands shaking with excitement and fear in equal measure. The fear was justified. News of a strike traveled fast in mining country, and not everyone respected a lone woman's claim. She needed to get this assayed, needed to file the proper paperwork, needed to start extracting the gold before someone decided to take it from her by force or by fraud. Katherine gathered her tools as the sun began its descent toward the western mountains. The walk back to Snake River took an hour, and she made it just as the shadows grew long across the dusty Main Street. The town was small, maybe 300 souls, but it had everything a mining community needed: a land office and a sayer, a general store, 2 saloons, and a sheriff who was usually drunk by noon. She went straight to the assayer's office, but the door was locked, a sign indicating he would return in the morning. Katherine clutched her samples tighter, suddenly aware of how exposed she was. Several men loitered outside the Silver Strike saloon, and she could feel their eyes on her as she walked past. She kept her head high, her stride purposeful, but her heart hammered against her ribs. The boarding house where she rented a room sat at the edge of town, run by a widow named Mrs. Pemberton, who asked few questions as long as the rent was paid. Katherine climbed the stairs to her small second-floor room, locked the door behind her, and only then allowed herself to breathe. She spread the rock samples on her washstand, studying them in the fading light. The gold was visible even to her untrained eye, bright and unmistakable against the darker stone. Sleep came hard that night. Every creak of the old building made her bolt upright. Every voice from the street below made her reach for the pistol her father had taught her to shoot. When dawn finally broke, she was already dressed, the samples wrapped carefully in canvas and tucked into her satchel. The assayer, a meticulous German man named Hoffman, examined her samples with the focused intensity of a jeweler. Katherine stood across from his workbench, trying not to fidget, trying not to seem too eager or too anxious. After what felt like an eternity, Hoffman looked up, his expression carefully neutral. "Where did you find this?" he asked. "My claim. The one that was my father's out in Copper Canyon." Hoffman nodded slowly. "This is very good ore, Miss Walsh, very good indeed. I would estimate 40 to 50 ounces per ton, possibly more. If you have a significant vein, you are looking at considerable wealth." The words hit her like a physical force. Considerable wealth. Enough to leave Idaho if she wanted, to go to San Francisco or Denver, to live like a lady instead of working herself to exhaustion every day. Enough to prove that her father's dream had not been madness. "I need to keep this quiet," Katherine said. "Can I trust you?" Hoffman's expression softened slightly. "I will put nothing in writing beyond what is required for the official record, But Miss Walsh, you must understand, in a town like this, secrets are difficult to keep. Men talk. They notice things. You should consider taking on a partner, someone who can help you work the claim and protect it. I don't need a partner, I need discretion. Then you have it, as much as I can provide, but please be careful. Katherine paid him for the assay and walked to the land office, where she filed the necessary paperwork to confirm her claim. The clerk, a young man with ink-stained fingers, barely looked at her as he processed the forms. She paid the fees, received her stamped documents, and walked back into the bright morning sunshine feeling both triumphant and terrified. She bought supplies at the general store, flour and salt pork and coffee, enough to keep her at the claim for several days at a time. The fewer trips she made to town, the less attention she would draw. As she loaded her purchases into her father's old wagon, she became aware of someone watching her. He stood across the street, leaning against a post, a tall man in dusty trail clothes with a wide-brimmed hat pulled low over his eyes. Something about his stillness made her nervous. She climbed onto the wagon seat and picked up the reins, urging the two horses into motion. When she glanced back, the man was gone. The ride back to Copper Canyon took most of the morning. The claim sat in a remote area, accessible only by a rough track that wound through pine forests and across rocky slopes. Her father had built a small cabin there, barely more than 4 walls and a roof, but it was shelter. Katherine unhitched the horses, gave them water from the creek that ran nearby, and stood for a moment looking at her little piece of the earth. This was hers. No one could take it from her. The law was on her side, but she knew, with a cold certainty that settled in her stomach, that the law meant little out here, miles from town, with no witnesses and no help. She spent the afternoon working the vein she had discovered, carefully extracting ore and piling it near the cabin. It was backbreaking work, made harder by the knowledge that she had to do everything herself. She could not afford to hire help, not yet, not until she had extracted enough gold to make the claim obviously valuable. Once word got out that she had made a real strike, she could negotiate from a position of strength. As the sun set, Katherine made a simple dinner over her campfire, beans and hardtack, and sat listening to the sounds of the wilderness around her. Crickets sang, an owl hooted from the pines, the creek burbled over stones. It should have been peaceful. Instead, she felt watched. She doused her fire early and retreated to the cabin, barring the door and keeping her pistol close. Sleep came in fits and starts, every sound jolting her awake. Twice she rose and peered through gaps in the log walls, but saw nothing except darkness and shadows. The next 2 days passed in a blur of exhausting work. Katherine fell into a rhythm, swinging the pickaxe, hauling ore, crushing samples to see the gold separate from the rock. She had perhaps 200 pounds of ore extracted when she heard the sound of horses approaching. She straightened, wiping sweat from her face, her hand instinctively moving to the pistol tucked into her belt. 3 men rode into view, and she recognized one of them immediately. Victor Slade owned the largest mine in the area, a silver operation that employed half the men in Snake River. He was in his 50s, with the prosperous look of a man who had struck it rich and knew how to hold onto his wealth. The 2 men with him had the hard eyes of hired guns. "Miss Walsh," Slade called out, touching the brim of his expensive hat, "I heard you might have had some luck out here." "This is private property, Mr. Slade. You are trespassing." He smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. "Now, that is no way to greet a neighbor. I came to offer my assistance." "Mining is dangerous work, especially for someone working alone. I thought perhaps we could come to an arrangement." "I do not need an arrangement. I am managing fine on my own." Slade dismounted, and his men followed suit, Catherine's hand tightened on her pistol, but she did not draw it. Not yet. I will be direct, Miss Walsh. You have found something valuable. The whole town knows it. Hoffman talks when he drinks, and everyone saw you filing paperwork at the land office. You cannot work this claim alone, and you cannot protect it alone. Sell it to me. I will give you a fair price, more than enough for you to live comfortably somewhere else. It is not for sale. Everything is for sale. Name your price. I said no. Slade's pleasant expression hardened. You are being foolish. There are men in these mountains who would kill you for what you have found. I am offering you a peaceful solution. Get off my land. For a long moment, no one moved. Katherine could feel her heart pounding, could feel the weight of the pistol at her belt. She was outnumbered and outgunned, and they all knew it. Finally, Slade shrugged. I tried to be reasonable. Remember that. He remounted, and the three men rode away back down the trail toward town. Katherine watched them go, her legs suddenly shaking. She knew what that encounter meant. Slade would try to take the claim from her one way or another. She could file complaints with the sheriff, but the sheriff was in Slade's pocket. Everyone knew it. She was alone out here, and now everyone knew she was sitting on a fortune. That night, she did not even try to sleep. She sat in the cabin with her pistol across her lap, listening to every sound, jumping at every snap of a twig. When dawn finally came, she felt exhausted and frightened in a way she had not been since her father died. She could not keep this up. She could not work the claim and guard it simultaneously. She could not go days without sleep. Hoffman had been right. She needed help, but who could she trust? Katherine hitched up her wagon and made the long drive back to Snake River, arriving in mid-afternoon. The town felt different now, menacing. She saw Slade's men outside the saloon, saw the way people looked at her with a mixture of curiosity and something else, calculation, perhaps, or greed. She went to the sheriff's office, though she had little hope it would do any good. Sheriff Morton was exactly where she expected him to be, slumped in his chair with a bottle on his desk, and the smell of whiskey heavy in the air. Sheriff, I need to report a threat. Victor Slade came to my claim yesterday with armed men. He tried to intimidate me into selling. Morton looked at her with bleary eyes. Did he threaten you? Use violence. He implied that harm might come to me if I did not sell. Implying is not a crime, Miss Walsh. Mr. Slade is a respected businessman. I cannot go accusing him of wrongdoing based on your feelings. He is trying to steal my claim. Then hire some men to guard it. That is what everyone else does. I cannot post deputies out in Copper Canyon just to watch over you. Katherine left the office, fury and frustration burning in her chest. She had known it would be useless, but the confirmation still stung. She was crossing the street when she nearly collided with someone. Strong hands caught her shoulders, steadying her, and she looked up into the face of the man she had seen watching her days before. Up close, he was younger than she had thought, perhaps 26 or 27. He had dark hair that curled slightly at his collar, gray eyes that seemed to see everything, and a lean, weathered face that spoke of years spent outdoors. He wore a gun on his hip with the easy familiarity of someone who knew how to use it. "Pardon me, miss," he said, his voice low and rough like gravel. "I did not mean to startle you." "You have been watching me," Katherine said, too tired and frightened to be diplomatic. He did not deny it. "My name is Cole Irving. I have been working as a scout and guard for wagon trains, but the season is winding down. I heard you might be in need of someone to watch your claim." "How did you hear that?" "People talk. Word is that Victor Slade paid you a visit, and he does not pay social calls unless he wants something. Word is also that you have made a good strike and you are working it alone." Katherine studied him, trying to read his intentions. He had a steady gaze, direct but not aggressive. There was something about him that felt solid, reliable, though she barely knew him. "Why would you want to help me?" "I need work." "You need protection." "Seems like a fair arrangement. I am not asking for a share of your claim, just wages. $20 a week, and I will make sure no one bothers you or your gold." $20 a week was steep, but not unreasonable for a guard, and certainly less than Slade would pay his men to take the claim by force. "I cannot pay you until I have sold some of the ore," Katherine admitted. "Right now I am barely making ends meet," Cole nodded. "I figured as much. I will work on credit for the first month. If you cannot pay me by then, we will renegotiate." "Why would you do that? You do not know me. I could be lying about the strike." "I do not think you are. And I have seen what happens to people when men like Slade decide they want something. I would rather be on the side trying to stop it." Katherine made a decision. She had few options, and Cole Irving seemed sincere. More than that, there was something about him that made her feel, for the first time in days, a little less afraid. "All right. When can you start?" "Right now, if you need me. I can ride back to your claim with you." "I need to get supplies. Meet me at the general store in an hour." Cole touched his hat in acknowledgement and walked away. Katherine watched him go, wondering if she had just made the best decision of her life or the worst. She bought more supplies, including extra food now that she would be feeding 2 people, and waited by her wagon. Cole arrived exactly on time, riding a sturdy bay horse and carrying a bedroll and saddlebags that suggested he lived a transient life. He tied his horse to the back of her wagon and climbed up beside her on the seat. "You can drive your horse if you prefer," Katherine said. "This is fine. I would rather be close by if someone tries to stop us on the road." The comment sent a chill through her, but she appreciated his directness. She snapped the reins, and the wagon lurched into motion. They rode in silence for a while, the town falling away behind them. Finally, Katherine said, "You really think someone might try to ambush us?" "I think Slade wants your claim, and he is not patient. He also does not like being told no. So yes, I think we should be cautious." "Have you worked for him before?" "He offered me a job once. I turned it down. I did not like the things he wanted me to do." "What things?" Cole glanced at her. "Persuading people to sell their claims, breaking up labor disputes at his mine, essentially being the kind of man I do not want to be." "So you have principles." "I try to." They passed into the forested section of the trail, where the trees closed in on both sides and the shadows grew deep. Katherine found herself relaxing slightly. Cole's presence beside her was reassuring, his calm confidence easing her fear. "You really think you can protect me?" she asked. "If Slade sends men, I think I can make it costly enough that he decides it is not worth the trouble. Most bullies back down when they meet real resistance. And if they do not, then we fight." The simplicity of his answer was somehow comforting. Katherine had been alone for so long, carrying all the weight of her fear and responsibility by herself. Having someone else share that burden, even a stranger, felt like a gift. They reached the claim without incident. Cole dismounted and surveyed the area with a practiced eye, taking in the cabin, the mine entrance, the creek, the sight lines from the surrounding hills. "You are vulnerable here," he said. "Anyone could approach from those trees and you would not see them until they were close. We need to set up a better perimeter." "How do we do that?" "Tripwires with bells, for one thing. Clear some of the brush so there is no cover near the cabin. I will sleep outside where I can hear anyone approaching." "There is room in the cabin," Katherine protested. "It is not much, but there is a spare bedroll." Cole shook his head. "You will be more comfortable knowing I am keeping watch. Besides, I am used to sleeping rough. A few nights under the stars will not hurt me." Over the next few hours, Cole worked to improve their defenses. He strung wire between trees at ankle height, attaching small bells that would jingle if anyone tripped them. He cut back brush and cleared sight lines. He made a fire ring a distance from the cabin, where he could sit and watch without being silhouetted by flames. Katherine watched him work, impressed by his efficiency and his obvious experience. As evening approached, she made dinner, a better meal than she had managed in weeks now that she had help. Cole ate with quiet appreciation, complimenting her cooking in a way that made her flush with pleasure. "Tell me about yourself," Katherine said as they sat by the fire. "Where are you from?" "Texas, originally. My family had a ranch down near San Antonio. I left when I was 18 to see the country. I have been drifting ever since, working where I can find it." "You miss your family?" Something shadowed his expression. "They are gone now. Fever took my mother and sister. My father died a year later. I think his heart just gave out from grief. There was nothing left to go back to, so I kept moving." "I am sorry. I lost my father 6 months ago. Fever like your family." "It is why I have the claim. And you are determined to make it work." "It was his dream. I suppose it has become mine too. Or maybe I just want to prove that I can do it, that I am not helpless just because I am a woman." Cole smiled, the expression transforming his serious face. "Anyone who thinks you are helpless is a fool. You have been working this claim alone for months. That takes strength most men do not have." The compliment warmed her more than the fire. They talked for another hour, the conversation flowing easily. Katherine learned that Cole had worked as a scout for the Army, a cowhand on ranches from Texas to Montana, a guard on stage coaches, and a dozen other jobs. He had a quiet intelligence and a wry sense of humor that made her laugh. When they finally said goodnight, she felt something she had not felt in a long time: hope. True to his word, Cole slept outside, his bedroll positioned where he could see the trail and the approaches to the cabin. Katherine went inside, barred the door, and for the first time in days, slept deeply. She woke to the smell of coffee and found Cole had already started a fire and put a pot on to boil. He handed her a cup as she emerged, bleary-eyed, into the cool morning air. "You should have woken me," she said. "I could have done that. You needed sleep. Besides, I am used to early mornings." They fell into a routine over the next several days. Katherine worked the mine, extracting ore and processing it as best she could with her limited equipment. Cole kept watch, scouted the surrounding area, and helped with the heavier lifting. He rarely spoke unless spoken to, but his presence was a constant reassurance. Katherine found herself stealing glances at him as he worked, admiring the easy strength in his movements, the way he seemed always alert but never anxious. On the 4th day, the tripwires jingled in the night. Katherine jerked awake, her heart pounding. She heard Cole's voice, low and commanding. "Stay where you are. I have a rifle aimed at your chest. Easy, friend." An unfamiliar voice, male with an edge of nervousness. "We are just passing through. At midnight. In a place where there is no trail." "Try again." A pause. Then, "Mr. Slade sent us. He wants to talk to Miss Walsh about her claim." "She already talked to him. She is not interested. You can tell Slade that this claim is protected now and anyone who trespasses will be dealt with." Big words for one man. "You are welcome to test them, but I promise at least one of you will not ride back." Another pause, longer this time, then the sound of horses moving away, back into the darkness. Katherine crept to the cabin door and peered out. Cole stood near the fire ring, his rifle still raised, watching until the sounds faded completely. "Are they gone?" she whispered. "For now. They will report back to Slade. He is testing us, seeing how serious we are. What do? We stay alert. And tomorrow, we go to town and make some noise." In the morning, they made the trip to Snake River together. Cole rode beside the wagon on his horse, his eyes constantly scanning the trail. When they arrived in town, he dismounted and walked with Katherine to the assayer's office. "I need to sell some ore," Katherine told Hoffman. "Can you handle it, or do I need to go to Boise City?" Hoffman examined the samples she brought. "I can handle it. This is excellent quality, Miss Walsh. I can offer you $400 for what you have here." It was less than the gold was probably worth, but it was cash, and Katherine needed cash. She accepted the offer, and Hoffman counted out the bills with his usual meticulous care. From there, they went to the telegraph office. Cole helped her compose a message to the territorial governor's office in Boise City, formally reporting Slade's attempts to intimidate her and requesting assistance in protecting her legal claim. The clerk sent the message, though he looked skeptical about what response it might bring. "That will put people on notice," Cole said as they left. "Slade will have a harder time claiming ignorance if something happens to you. Will it actually help? Maybe. It depends on how much influence Slade has in Boise, but at least there is a record now." They had lunch at a small restaurant, and Katherine paid Cole his first week's wages. He tucked the bills away without counting them, trusting her honesty. The gesture touched her more than she wanted to admit. As they walked back to the wagon, they passed the Silver Strike Saloon. Slade stood outside with several of his men. His eyes fixed on Katherine, then shifted to Cole, and something like recognition passed over his face. "Irving, I heard you were in town. Did not realize you had hired on with Miss Walsh." "I go where the work is," Cole said evenly. "I will double whatever she is paying you. Not interested. Triple." "I said no." Slade's expression darkened. "You are making a mistake. I always get what I want one way or another. Then I guess this will be a new experience for you." For a moment, Katherine thought Slade might do something violent right there in the street, but he mastered himself, forced a smile, and stepped back. "We will see," he said. They left town quickly, both of them tense. As they rode back toward Copper Canyon, Cole said, "He is going to escalate." That was a threat, and he meant it. "What can we do? Be ready, and hope he backs down before it comes to real trouble." But Katherine knew with a sinking feeling in her stomach that Slade was not the backing down type. They increased security at the claim. Cole set more tripwires, positioned warning bells, and taught Katherine how to shoot her pistol more accurately. In the evenings, they practiced, setting up targets and firing until her hands were steady and her aim was true. Cole was a patient teacher, correcting her stance and grip without making her feel foolish. "You are getting good," he said after she hit 3 targets in a row. "With any luck, you will never need to use it for real, but it is better to be prepared." "Have you killed men before?" Katherine asked, then immediately regretted the question. "I am sorry, that is too personal." "It is all right. Yes, I have. During the war and a few times since when there was no other choice. It is not something I am proud of, but sometimes the world does not give you better options." "I do not know if I could do it, even to defend myself." Cole looked at her seriously. "I hope you never have to find out, but if it comes to it, remember that you have the right to protect yourself and what is yours. There is no shame in fighting back." As the days passed, Katherine found her feelings for Cole deepening beyond gratitude or relief. She noticed little things. The way he smiled when he thought she was not looking, the gentleness in his hands when he helped her with heavy work, the sound of his voice in the morning as he greeted the day. She caught him watching her sometimes, his expression unreadable, and she wondered if he felt the same pull she did. They were dancing around something neither of them wanted to name, afraid perhaps that speaking it aloud would shatter the fragile peace they had found. 2 weeks after Cole had arrived, Katherine sold another batch of ore, this time for $600. She paid Cole his wages and bought better mining equipment, a proper sluice box and some dynamite for blasting. The claim was producing well, better than her father had ever imagined, and for the first time, Katherine allowed herself to think about the future beyond mere survival. "I could hire more men," she said one evening as they sat by the fire. "If the vein holds, I could expand the operation, maybe even build a real mine with tunnels and supports." "You could," Cole agreed, "but that brings more risk. More people means more chances for someone to sabotage the operation or steal from you. What would you do if this were your claim?" "I would work it quietly as you are doing now until I had enough capital to build something secure. Then I would expand. But that is just me. I am cautious by nature." "I think you are wise, not cautious." He smiled at that, a genuine warm smile that made her heart skip. "I think you are the wise one. You have managed to hold this claim against considerable pressure. That takes more than luck. I have had help. You would have found a way, even without me. You are stubborn enough." They laughed together, and the moment felt intimate in a way that had nothing to do with words. That night, as Katherine lay in her bedroll, she admitted to herself what she had been denying for days. She was falling in love with Cole Irving. It was impractical and possibly foolish, given how little time they had known each other, but the feeling was undeniable. She wanted to know everything about him, wanted to hear his voice every morning, wanted to build a future that included him in more than just a professional capacity. The question was whether he felt the same way. The answer came sooner than she expected. 3 nights later, the bells rang again. This time there were more men, at least 6 by the sound of the horses. Cole was on his feet instantly, rifle in hand. Katherine emerged from the cabin with her pistol, her heart pounding but her hand steady. "That is far enough," Cole called into the darkness. "State your business." "Our business is with Miss Walsh." It was Slade's voice, confident and cold. "I am making one final offer. $10,000 for the claim, cash, right now. Take it and walk away." "No," Katherine called back. "I have told you before it is not for sale." "Then you are a fool." "Boys, persuade her." Gunfire erupted. Katherine ducked behind the cabin wall as bullets thudded into the wood. Cole returned fire, the crack of his rifle sharp in the night air. She heard a man scream, heard horses whinny in panic. "Stay down," Cole shouted to her. But Katherine was done being passive. She leaned around the corner and fired her pistol at the muzzle flashes in the darkness. She did not know if she hit anyone, but the gunfire slackened. "Enough," Slade's voice, angry now. "Fall back." The sound of retreating horses filled the night. Cole fired one more shot, then lowered his rifle, breathing hard. "Are you hurt?" Katherine asked, rushing to his side. "I am fine. You?" "I am all right. Did we hit any of them?" "At least one. I heard him go down. They will think twice before trying that again." But Katherine knew this was far from over. Slade had escalated to violence, and he would not stop now. They had humiliated him, and men like him did not forgive humiliation. "We need to leave," she said. "Go to Boise City, file a complaint with the territorial marshal. This has gone beyond what we can handle alone." Cole nodded. "At first light, we will pack what we can and go. But we cannot leave the claim unguarded. They will strip it clean while we are gone. I do not care about the gold anymore. I care about staying alive." He looked at her, his eyes intense in the firelight. "Katherine, I will not let them take this from you. Your father's dream, your work, everything you have built, we will find a way." The use of her first name, the emotion in his voice, made something inside her break open. She stepped close to him, close enough to feel the heat from his body. "Cole, I need you to know something. If we do not make it through this, I need you to know that these past few weeks, having you here, they have been the best weeks I have had since my father died. You have given me more than protection. You have given me hope." His hand came up to cup her face, his calloused palm gentle against her skin. Catherine, I have been drifting for years, never staying anywhere long enough to matter. But here, with you, I feel like I have finally found something worth staying for. You are worth staying for." He kissed her then, and it was everything she had hoped for, tender and fierce and full of promise. She wrapped her arms around him, holding on like he was the only solid thing in a world that had turned dangerous and uncertain. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Cole rested his forehead against hers. "We are going to survive this, I promise you that. And when we do, if you will have me, I would like to stay, not as your guard, but as your partner, in all things." "Yes," Catherine whispered. "Yes, I want that. I want you." They held each other as the night slowly gave way to dawn, and for a little while the danger surrounding them faded into insignificance. In the morning, they prepared to leave for Boy's City. Catherine packed her most important documents, proof of her claim and the assay reports. Cole saddled both horses and hitched them to the wagon. They were loading supplies when they heard riders approaching. "Get in the cabin," Cole said, reaching for his rifle, but it was not Slade's men. It was Sheriff Morton, looking more sober than Catherine had ever seen him, and behind him, a man in a dark suit with a badge pinned to his vest. A territorial marshal. "Miss Walsh," the sheriff called. "This is Marshal Davies from Boy's City. He received your telegram and came to investigate." Catherine and Cole exchanged glances, hardly daring to hope. The marshal dismounted and approached with the measured calm of a man used to authority. "Miss Walsh, I understand you have been experiencing threats related to your mining claim. I would like to hear your account of events." Catherine told him everything. Slade's initial visit, his attempts to intimidate her, the ambush on the trail, last night's gunfight. Cole corroborated her story, adding details about the men he had recognized as being in Slade's employ. Marshal Davies listened without interruption, his expression growing grimmer. When they finished, he nodded. "I will be speaking with Mr. Slade. If what you say is true, and I have no reason to doubt you, he will face serious charges. Attempted theft, assault, possibly attempted murder. The territorial government takes a dim view of such activities." "He is wealthy," Catherine said. "He has influence." "Wealth does not place a man above the law, Miss Walsh. I assure you justice will be served." The marshal and the sheriff rode back toward town. Catherine watched them go, almost unable to believe that help had finally arrived. "You think it is real?" she asked Cole. "Do you think they will actually arrest him? Davies has a reputation for being honest. If he says he will investigate, he will. But Slade is slippery. We need to be careful until this is resolved." They decided to stay at the claim but remain vigilant. Over the next 3 days they heard nothing from town. The silence was nerve-wracking. Finally, unable to stand the uncertainty, they made the trip to Snake River. The town was buzzing with news. Victor Slade had been arrested. 3 of his men had been arrested. The territorial marshal had found evidence of claim jumping, fraud, and intimidation tactics going back years. Slade's empire was crumbling, and people who had been afraid to speak out were now coming forward with their own stories. Catherine stood in the middle of the street, hardly able to process it. It was over. The threat was gone. Cole took her hand, squeezing gently. "You did it. You stood up to him and you won." "We did it," Catherine corrected. "I could not have done this without you." They went to the land office, where the clerk confirmed that Catherine's claim was secure, with no pending disputes or challenges. They went to the assayer's office, where Hoffman congratulated her and offered to help her find buyers for her gold. They went to the general store, where the owner, who had always been polite but distant, now greeted her with warmth and respect. Everything had changed. That night, back at the claim, they celebrated with a better dinner than usual, a chicken Catherine had bought in town and fresh vegetables. They opened a bottle of wine, a luxury she had not allowed herself since before her father died. As the sun set and the stars emerged, they sat together by the fire, Cole's arm around her shoulders, her head resting against his chest. "What happens now?" Katherine asked. "Now that the danger is past. That depends on you. What do you want?" "I want to keep working the claim. I want to build something real here, something that will last. And I want you with me if you still want to stay." "I do. But Katherine, I need to be honest with you. I do not know much about mining. I can protect you, I can help with the physical work, but when it comes to the business side, I will be learning alongside you." "That is all right. We will figure it out together." Cole turned so he could look at her properly. "I love you. I know it is fast, and maybe I should wait longer to say it, but life is too short to waste time. I love you, and I want to build a life with you here or wherever you want to go." Katherine felt tears prick her eyes, but they were happy tears. "I love you too. I think I started falling for you the first day you showed up, even though I did not want to admit it. You made me feel safe, but more than that, you made me feel seen. Like I was worth protecting, worth believing in." "You are worth everything," Cole said and kissed her. They made love that night under the stars, tender and passionate, discovering each other with the kind of wonder that comes from finding something unexpected and precious. Afterward, wrapped in blankets with Cole's arms around her, Katherine felt a contentment she had never known before. The next few months were a whirlwind of activity. With the threat from Slade removed, Katherine was free to focus on developing her claim properly. She hired a crew of miners, men Cole vetted carefully to ensure they were trustworthy. They built proper structures, a reinforced mine entrance, a mill for processing ore, a secure storage building. The vein of gold proved to be extensive, and the claim produced steadily. Katherine and Cole were married in the small church in Snake River on a crisp October day in 1872. Mrs. Pemberton cried happy tears. Hoffman served as a witness, and even Marshall Davies sent his congratulations from Boise City. It was a simple ceremony, but it was perfect. They built a real house on the claim, replacing the rough cabin with something more substantial. It had glass windows, a stone fireplace, and a porch where they could sit and watch the sunsets. Katherine hung curtains she sewed herself, and Cole built furniture from pine he cut in the surrounding forest. Life settled into a rhythm. Katherine managed the business side of the mine, keeping meticulous records and negotiating with buyers. Cole supervised the crew and handled security, though the need for guards diminished as word spread that the claim was well protected, and the owners were not to be trifled with. They worked hard, but they also made time for each other, for long walks in the mountains, for evenings spent reading by the fire, for quiet mornings in bed before the day began. In the spring of 1873, Katherine discovered she was pregnant. The news filled them both with joy and a little fear. They were young, and the prospect of parenthood was daunting, but they faced it together as they faced everything. Their son was born in December, during the first snowfall of winter. They named him Daniel, after Katherine's father. He was healthy and loud, with a shock of dark hair like his father and his mother's determined spirit. Cole held him with a tenderness that made Katherine fall in love with him all over again. The mine continued to produce well. By 1874, Katherine and Cole were prosperous enough to invest in other ventures. They bought a small ranch near Snake River, where they raised horses and cattle. Cole loved the work, loved being on horseback and managing the land. Katherine split her time between the mine and the ranch, somehow juggling motherhood and business with a competence that amazed everyone who knew her. In 1875, their daughter was born. They named her Sarah, and she had her mother's blonde hair and her father's gray eyes. Daniel, now too was fascinated by his baby sister and insisted on helping with everything, from fetching diapers to singing her lullabies in his toddling, off-key voice. The years passed in a blur of happiness and hard work. The mine eventually played out, as all mines do, but by then Katherine and Cole had diversified enough that it did not matter. The ranch thrived, and they bought more land, becoming one of the more prosperous families in the territory. In 1876, Idaho was still a territory, but talk of statehood was growing. Cole became involved in local politics, serving on the town council and advocating for better roads and schools. Katherine used her influence to support education initiatives, particularly for girls, arguing that women should have the same opportunities she had fought so hard to claim. Their children grew. Daniel was serious and thoughtful, with a love for books and learning. Sarah was adventurous and fearless, always climbing trees and demanding to help with the horses. Katherine and Cole raised them to be independent and strong, to stand up for themselves and for others. In 1878, on a warm summer evening, Katherine and Cole sat on the porch of their house, watching Daniel and Sarah play in the yard. Daniel was 7 now, Sarah 3, and Katherine was pregnant again, though they had not yet told the children. "Can you believe how far we have come?" Katherine asked, leaning against Cole's shoulder. 6 years ago I was terrified and alone, thinking I might lose everything. 6 years ago I was drifting, thinking I would never find a place to belong, and then I found you. You saved me, Cole. I would never have been able to hold the claim without you. You would have found a way. You are the strongest person I know, but I am glad I was there, glad I got to be part of your story. Our story, Katherine corrected. This is our story now. He kissed her temple. I love you. I will always love you. And I will always love you. Their third child, a son they named Thomas, was born in early 1879. He was a happy baby, easygoing and content, a contrast to Daniel's seriousness and Sarah's wildness. The house was full of noise and laughter, of children's voices and the chaos of a growing family. In 1880, Katherine sold the last of her mining interests, deciding to focus entirely on the ranch and her family. The gold had given her a start, had allowed her to build a life of security and prosperity, but it was the ranch and the family she had built with Cole that truly mattered. They expanded the ranch operations, breeding high-quality horses that were in demand throughout the territory. Cole proved to have a gift for horse training, and people came from miles around to buy his animals. Katherine managed the books and the sales, her sharp mind for business ensuring they got fair prices and built a reputation for honesty. The children thrived. Daniel, serious and studious, talked about becoming a lawyer someday. Sarah, fearless and physical, wanted to be a rancher like her parents. Thomas, still young, toddled around the ranch with endless curiosity, getting into everything and charming everyone with his gap-toothed smile. In 1882, Snake River got its first proper school, a building funded in part by Katherine's donations. She served on the school board and insisted that girls be given the same educational opportunities as boys. It was a small victory, but an important one, and it made her proud. Cole taught the children to ride, to rope, to shoot. He also taught them to be kind, to stand up for those who could not stand up for themselves, to value honesty and hard work. He was patient and loving, the kind of father Katherine had always hoped he would be. On their 10th wedding anniversary in October 1882, Cole surprised Katherine with a trip to San Francisco. Mrs. Pemberton, now elderly but still sharp, agreed to watch the children. It was the first time Katherine and Cole had been alone together, truly alone, since Daniel was born. They stayed in a fine hotel, ate in elegant restaurants, walked along the waterfront, and talked for hours about everything and nothing. It was a reminder that beneath the roles of parents and business owners, they were still the two people who had fallen in love in a rough mining camp, who had fought together to build something lasting. "You ever miss it?" Cole asked one evening as they watched the sun set over the Pacific Ocean. The excitement, the danger, the uncertainty of those early days, Katherine considered. "Sometimes, but not often. I would not trade what we have now for anything. This life, our children, the security we have built, it is everything I ever wanted, even if I did not know it then. No regrets. Only that my father did not live to see it. He would have loved watching his grandchildren grow up. He would have loved you. I wish I could have known him. He raised an extraordinary daughter." They returned to Idaho refreshed and reconnected, ready to face whatever came next. The years continued to pass in a steady progression of seasons and milestones. Daniel entered his teenage years, becoming more serious and determined to make his mark on the world. Sarah, now 11, was her father's shadow, learning everything she could about ranching and horses. Thomas, at 7, was starting to show an interest in building things, constructing elaborate projects out of scrap wood. In 1885, Katherine and Cole celebrated their 13th anniversary with a quiet dinner at home, the children asleep upstairs. They talked about expanding the ranch, maybe buying the property to the north that had recently come up for sale. "We could raise more cattle," Cole suggested. "The market is strong right now. Or we could diversify into sheep. I know cattle ranchers hate sheep, but the wool market is excellent." They debated good-naturedly, as they always did, two partners who respected each other's opinions and worked through disagreements with patience and humor. In 1886, Idaho Territory continued to grow. More settlers arrived, more towns sprouted up, and the push for statehood grew stronger. Cole was asked to serve as a delegate to a territorial convention, and he accepted, wanting to help shape the future of the place they called home. Katherine stayed behind to manage the ranch, and she did so with her usual competence. She also found time to mentor younger women in the area, those who wanted to run their own businesses or manage their own affairs. She shared the lessons she had learned about standing firm in the face of opposition, about the importance of keeping good records, about trusting your own judgment. Daniel, now 14, announced his intention to study law. Katherine and Cole supported him, proud of his ambition. Sarah, at 13, declared she would never leave the ranch, that she would run it someday. Thomas, at 10, was still experimenting with different interests, but he showed promise in everything he tried. In 1887, Katherine received word that Victor Slade had died in prison. The news stirred complicated feelings. She did not mourn him, but she did feel a sense of closure. That chapter of her life, the fear and danger, was truly over. She told Cole that evening as they sat on the porch, a ritual they had maintained for years. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Relieved mostly, and grateful. If you had not come along when you did, if you had not stood with me, things could have turned out very differently. I think you would have found a way, you always do, maybe, but I am glad I did not have to do it alone." He took her hand, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "You will never be alone, not as long as I am alive. Promise me something, Cole. Promise me that no matter what happens, we will always face it together, that we will always be partners." "I promise. Always." In 1888, Daniel left for college in the East, heading to a prestigious law school. It was hard to see him go, but Katherine and Cole were proud. Sarah, now 15, took on more responsibilities at the ranch, working alongside her father with skill and dedication. Thomas, at 12, was developing an interest in engineering, fascinated by the trains that now connected Idaho to the rest of the country. The ranch continued to thrive. Cole's horses were renowned throughout the region, and Catherine's business acumen kept them profitable even in difficult economic times. They employed several ranch hands, treated them fairly, and earned their loyalty. In 1890, Idaho finally achieved statehood. Cole attended the celebration in Boise City, representing Snake River at the ceremonies. It was a moment of pride for everyone who had worked to build the new state, proof that the rough frontier was evolving into something more permanent. Katherine stayed home, managing the ranch and caring for Sarah and Thomas. When Cole returned, full of stories about the celebrations and the speeches, she listened with interest but no envy. Her place was here, on the land she and Cole had built together, surrounded by the family they had created. That year, Sarah met a young man named Peter, the son of a neighboring rancher. He was 20, she was 17, and Cole was immediately protective. But Katherine saw the way Peter looked at Sarah, with respect and genuine affection, and she remembered how Cole had looked at her in those early days. "She is too young," Cole protested, when Sarah asked permission to accept Peter's courting. "She is the same age I was when I fell in love with you," Katherine reminded him gently. "And Peter is a good man. You know his family. They are honest people." "That does not mean I have to like the idea of some boy courting my daughter," Katherine laughed. "You do not have to like it. You just have to accept it. She is growing up, Cole. We cannot stop that." Reluctantly, Cole agreed, and Peter began visiting regularly. He was polite and hardworking, and even Cole had to admit, grudgingly, that he was a decent young man. In 1891, Daniel graduated from law school and returned to Idaho. He set up practice in Boise City, quickly earning a reputation as a skilled and honest attorney. Katherine and Cole attended his first big trial, watching with pride as their son argued eloquently on behalf of his client. That same year, Thomas announced his intention to study engineering. He wanted to work on the railroads, to help build the infrastructure that would connect the West to the rest of the nation. Cole was less enthusiastic about this than he had been about Daniel's law career, worried about the dangers of railroad work, but Katherine reminded him that they had always encouraged their children to follow their passions. In 1892, Sarah and Peter were married in a ceremony at the ranch. It was a beautiful day, clear and warm, with friends and family gathered from across the territory. Katherine watched her daughter take her vows, so confident and happy, and felt tears of joy streaming down her face. Cole stood beside her, his hand clasping hers, and she knew he was feeling the same complex mix of happiness and loss that comes with watching a child begin their own life. Peter and Sarah built a house on his family's ranch, just a few miles from Katherine and Cole's place. Sarah continued to help with the horses, now dividing her time between two ranches, and Katherine saw her often. It was not the same as having her daughter at home, but it was good to see her so happy. In 1893, Thomas left for school in Chicago, where he would study engineering. The house felt empty with all three children gone, and Katherine found herself at loose ends for the first time in years. "We raised them well," Cole said one evening as they sat on the porch, just the two of them. "They are all making their own way in the world, being successful, being good people. We should be proud. I am proud, but I miss them. I miss the chaos and the noise. So do I. But this gives us time for each other again, time to remember who we were before we were parents." Katherine smiled. "I like who we are now, but I like the idea of having time together too." They traveled that year, visiting Daniel in Boise City and Thomas in Chicago. They saw the sights, marveled at the changes happening across the country, and returned to Idaho grateful for the quiet simplicity of their ranch. In 1894, Sarah gave birth to her first child, a daughter named Katherine after her grandmother. Holding her granddaughter for the first time, Katherine felt a rush of emotion so intense it nearly overwhelmed her. This tiny person represented the future, the continuation of everything she and Cole had built. Cole was equally smitten. He held little Katherine with the same tenderness he had shown with his own children, whispering nonsense to her while she gazed at him with unfocused eyes. "We are grandparents," he said, sounding amazed. "How did that happen?" "Time," Katherine said, laughing. "It just kept passing while we were busy living." In 1895, Daniel married a woman named Elizabeth, a teacher he had met in Boise City. She was intelligent and kind, and Katherine liked her immediately. They had a small wedding, and Katherine and Cole traveled to Boise City for the ceremony. Thomas returned home for a visit that same year, full of stories about his work on the railroads. He had grown into a confident young man, still with the easy smile of his childhood, but with new experiences that had shaped him. He talked about the future, about the ways transportation was changing the country, and Katherine listened with fascination. In 1896, Sarah and Peter had a second child, a son they named Cole. The elder Cole was so moved he could barely speak when Sarah told him. He held his grandson, this tiny person who carried his name, and Katherine saw tears in his eyes. "I never thought I would have this," he said quietly. "A family, grandchildren, a legacy. I thought I would keep drifting forever." "You found your place," Katherine said. "You found your home. I found you. That was all I needed." The years continued in this pleasant pattern. In 1897, Daniel and Elizabeth had their first child, a son named Richard. Thomas met a young woman named Anne in Chicago, and by 1898 they were engaged. The family continued to grow and expand, each generation building on what had come before. In 1899, Katherine and Cole celebrated their 27th wedding anniversary. They were in their early 50s now, their hair graying, lines etched on their faces from years of sun and wind. But they were healthy and happy, surrounded by family and secure in the knowledge that they had built something lasting. They sat on their porch, as they had done countless evenings before, watching the sunset paint the Idaho sky in shades of gold and pink. "You remember the first night we spent here?" Katherine asked. "When I was so frightened and you stood guard outside my cabin." "I remember. I remember thinking you were the bravest person I had ever met, standing up to Slade the way you did. I was terrified. Being brave does not mean not being afraid. It means doing what needs to be done despite the fear. You taught me that." Katherine leaned against him, comfortable and content. "We have had a good life, Cole, better than I ever dreamed possible. We have. And it is not over yet. We still have years ahead of us, more grandchildren to spoil, more sunsets to watch. Promise me something. Anything. Promise me that when our time comes, when we are old and ready to go, we will go together. I do not want to face this world without you." Cole pulled her close, kissing the top of her head. "I promise I will do everything in my power to make that happen." "But Katherine, if one of us goes first, the other will survive. Because we have to, for our children and grandchildren. We have to show them how to keep going, how to honor the love we shared by living fully until the end. You are right, but I hope it does not come to that for a long time yet." "So do I. I plan to love you for at least another 30 years. Only 30, all right, 40, 50. However long we have, I will love you every day of it." They sat in comfortable silence as darkness fell, wrapped in blankets against the cooling evening air. Two people who had faced danger and uncertainty together and emerged stronger for it. In the years that followed, the Irving family continued to grow. Thomas married Anne and they settled in Boise City, where he worked as a civil engineer. More grandchildren arrived, each one welcomed with joy. The ranch remained successful, now run jointly by Cole and Peter, with Sarah managing much of the day-to-day operations. Katherine, now in her 60s, spent her time mentoring young women, serving on community boards and writing letters to her children and grandchildren. She had become a respected elder in Snake River, someone people came to for advice and wisdom. Cole, also in his 60s, had slowed down but still insisted on working with the horses. It was his passion, and Katherine knew better than to try to stop him. She did insist he take help from the younger ranch hands, and he agreed, recognizing that his body could not do what it once had. In 1905, they celebrated their 33rd anniversary. All three of their children came home for the occasion, bringing their families. The house was full of noise and laughter, grandchildren running through the rooms, adults catching up on news. Katherine looked around at the gathering and felt a profound sense of gratitude. That evening, after everyone had gone to bed, she and Cole sat on the porch one more time. "This is everything I ever wanted," Katherine said. "This family, this life, you. Thank you for standing guard all those years ago. Thank you for staying. Thank you for letting me stay. Thank you for loving me, for building this life with me. I have been blessed beyond measure. We both have." They held hands, watching the stars emerge in the clear Idaho sky. Two people who had started with nothing but determination and love and built an empire of family and happiness. In 1908, Katherine fell ill. It started as a cough that would not go away, then developed into something more serious. The doctor diagnosed pneumonia and ordered bed rest. Cole barely left her side, sitting with her through the long nights, bringing her food and medicine, reading to her when she was too weak to hold a book herself. Their children came as soon as they heard. Daniel brought a specialist from Boise City. Sarah moved back into the house to help care for her mother. Thomas arranged his schedule so he could spend as much time as possible at the ranch. Katherine fought the illness with the same determination she had shown when facing Slade all those years ago. It took weeks, but slowly, she began to improve. The day she was finally able to get out of bed and walk to the porch, leaning heavily on Cole's arm, was a day of celebration. "I am not done yet," she told her family, her voice still weak but her eyes fierce. "I have more life to live, more grandchildren to meet, more sunsets to watch with your father." And she was right. Katherine recovered fully, and she and Cole had several more good years together. They watched their family continue to grow, welcomed great-grandchildren, and enjoyed the peaceful rhythm of their later years. In 1912, on a warm spring morning, Katherine woke to find Cole had died peacefully in his sleep beside her. He was 66 years old. The grief that crashed over her was overwhelming, a physical pain that made it hard to breathe. For a long time, she simply held him, memorizing his face, unwilling to let go. Her children came. They made arrangements, held a funeral that was attended by hundreds of people whose lives Cole had touched. Katherine stood at his graveside, dry-eyed because she had cried so much in private that there were no tears left, and said goodbye to the man who had been her partner, her protector, her great love. The months that followed were the hardest of her life. The ranch felt empty without Cole, every corner full of memories. Sarah and Peter offered to have her move in with them, but Katherine refused. This was her home, hers and Cole's, and she would not abandon it. She found solace in her grandchildren and great-grandchildren, in the work that still needed doing, in the community she had helped build. She told stories about Cole to anyone who would listen, keeping his memory alive through words. On what would have been their 40th wedding anniversary, Katherine sat on the porch alone, wrapped in one of Cole's old coats that still smelled faintly of him. "I miss you," she said to the empty air. "Every day I miss you, but I am keeping my promise. I am living fully, honoring what we built together. Our children are thriving. Our grandchildren are growing up strong. Everything we worked for, everything we dreamed of, it is all still here." She stayed on the ranch for 2 more years, managing as best she could, stubbornly independent. But in 1914, at 64 years old, she finally agreed to move in with Sarah and Peter. The ranch would stay in the family, managed by her grandson Cole, who had inherited his grandfather's love of horses and the land. Katherine lived for 5 more years, surrounded by family, still sharp and engaged despite her advancing age. She saw the country change around her, saw automobiles replace horses, saw airplanes take to the sky. The world she had known as a young woman was fading, but the values she and Cole had instilled in their family remained strong. In the spring of 1919, Katherine died peacefully in her sleep, just as Cole had. She was 69 years old. Her children buried her next to Cole, under a simple headstone that bore both their names and the dates of their long lives. The ranch continued for generations, passed down through the family. The story of Katherine Walsh and Cole Irving, the woman who struck gold and the cowboy who protected her, became family legend, told to each new generation as a reminder of courage, love, and the power of standing together against adversity. Their legacy was not just the land or the wealth they had accumulated. It was the family they had created, the values they had lived by, and the love story that had started with a frightened young woman and a drifting cowboy who found in each other something worth fighting for, something worth building a life around, something that transcended fear and danger and time itself. And in the quiet evenings, when the sun set over the Idaho mountains and painted the sky in gold, their descendants would sometimes pause and remember the 2 people who had started it all, who had loved each other fiercely and completely, who had proved that with determination and partnership, anything was possible.